Welcome to afoa Canada's first webinar in the second series themed Resiliency in Challenging Times. We're sharing resources and information that can help you navigate through the ever-changing events during this unprecedented time. If you have any questions during the presentation, please add them in the Q&A or chat window. There will be a 15 to 20-minute Q&A session at the end of the presentation. There will also be polling questions throughout the webinar, so please submit your answers. Also, please visit our website for more information and to view the recordings and slides that will be added to the webinar page. Today, our presentation is on the future of travel from Indigeno Travel. Our topic today is centered on planning for a post-COVID-19 world and how Indigeno Travel is preparing for the comeback. Chris Maxfield, founder of Indigeno Travel and Vice President of Business Development, will provide an overview of the status of corporate travel and Indigenous tourism experiences domestically and abroad, with due emphasis on the recovery to date in a number of countries. It is generally accepted the economy, travel and tourism very much included, will recover as COVID recedes. With an eye to that future, Chris will provide an overview of Indigeno Travel and the steps it is taking to participate fully in that recovery while continuing to create meaningful jobs and valuable revenue streams for Indigenous people. Welcome to afoa Canada's second webinar series. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Douglas. I am very happy to be here joining everyone today. Thank you. And I would like to get to the presentation right away, if I may. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Indigeno Travel, and no better place to start than our story. This is a picture of me in the background and my longtime Anishinaabe friend, Daryl Phillips. He and I started Indigeno Travel in 2015 as a dream that both of us had about creating an Indigenous-owned travel agency to service not only Indigenous but non-Indigenous people as well. In 2017, Daryl came to me telling me that he was sick with a terminal illness, and he asked me to meet with him and his wife and a couple of their children. And he asked me to carry on with our shared dream of Indigeno Travel. So I left a career of 25 years with handling pension and benefits in Indigenous communities, always with Indigenous owned organizations. And I'm happy to say that we have now got Indigeno Travel up to a point where it is an ongoing and viable business. And I am also really happy that Daryl's surviving spouse, Charlene, now works with me every day, and she is our VP of Employment Diversity. These are our offices. If anyone is familiar with Winnipeg, we're right on the main drag of Portage Avenue. If you know where Polo Park is heading west, we're just before that. We have 7,600 square feet, and we employ 50 people in that building through our partnership with Great Canadian Travel and Continental Travel. So our purpose is to create meaningful, full-time employment for Indigenous people and to build capacity in the communities, creating a pool of HR potential from which to draw. Many of you will be familiar with how the banks in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe some places even in the late 70s, began putting branches on communities, in the communities, and training Indigenous people. Many of those folks went on to careers in other things such as leadership or finance, and we see ourselves creating that pool of HR potential for the future as well. And our purpose is to send millions of employment dollars into Indigenous households every year, and to also share a portion of our revenue to boost Indigenous tourism experiences in Canada. Our cause: bringing people together to foster greater understanding, tolerance, and acceptance of each other in the spirit of economic reconciliation, and creating more personal interactions between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to change their perceptions. We do that in a number of different ways, through Indigenous tourism, but also corporate travel with non-Indigenous entities, which I will get to in a moment. committing all our energies to end negative stereotypes about Indigenous people, and attracting employees and customers who believe in our cause. So on to COVID-19. I'm going to talk about what impact it had on the travel industry and you folks on the webinar today who were people who traveled in the past, which is pretty much everyone. And then I will focus a bit on the recovery observations that I've been making as being part of this industry now. So the immediate effects, I think everyone knows that there was a huge decline in air travel. Hotels saw a record-breaking drop in room nights, and because of that, there were layoffs across the board in travel, tourism sectors, all kinds of interrelated businesses as well. The Canada-US border closure has been crippling, honestly. And even the intra-provincial border closures, the one at Ontario at Terrace, and then of course the Maritimes have created their own bubble, making corporate travel especially, and which is more frequent, but also leisure travel has cut down drastically because of these borders and the self-quarantining that goes with travel past those borders. Indigenous tourism was hit very hard. The Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, ITAC, distributed over $4.9 million to 235 Indigenous businesses. The federal government was very gracious with their COVID-19 stimulus development fund. We work closely with ITAC. I was talking with some of the folks just last week, and I know that they're ramping up to deliver even more money to Indigenous businesses from the stimulus fund. And of course, Canadian tourism, which is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry, dropped by 59%. For example, in Banff, there was an 80 to 85% unemployment rate. And international tourism is at a standstill. So domestic tourism and travel. Let's talk about the recovery, the way that we see it from the industry perspective. Domestic travel has been happening the entire time since March, April to present. It has been picking up considerably. Sometimes the major carriers that have closed some of the routes that they were servicing before have been picked up by more regional airlines, especially in the Maritimes. So from August 2020, these are industry stats. Canada and the US are now at 31% and 37% respectively, based on 2019 volumes. South Korea, surprisingly, is at 93%. I would think that what they're experiencing something similar to what we are all experiencing in Canada now, too, as the fall season comes. But they are considered to do a lot of, even though they're an exporting nation, they do a lot of business within their country. New Zealand's at 71%. They've done an extraordinary job, helped mostly by the fact that they are an island. France at 42, Italy and Spain. So the reason I wanted to bring these stats to light here during this webinar is just to point out that, yes, things are bad and the media does have a huge impact on our perception, but I did want folks to know that there is travel still happening. One other thing that could happen that would really increase travel and tourism in Canada is if we can get these intra-provincial borders, the one I mentioned before at Terrace and the Maritimes, if we can get those lifted, but only at the appropriate time, of course. So the recovery includes a marketing focus on increasing domestic tourism. This has been the one thing that tourism in general, say Niagara Falls, for example, or Indigenous tourism, or places that survive on tourism, this has really been the only saving grace that they've had up to date. So there are some measures being discussed to increase travel and tourism, though. If you'll excuse me a moment, I'll have a drink. These measures everyone is familiar with. Temperature taking pre-boarding is already in place, but also the ones that we're more familiar with, such as cleanliness, hand sanitizing, masks, social distancing. But some other measures include airlines and airports are starting to offer rapid testing. So there is the rapid test that I'm sure some of you have read about in the media. Depending on the method and the actual hardware, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, you'll get a turnaround on whether or not you have tested positive or negative. So offering these pre-boarding could really increase travel quite a bit. You would be able to get the test done, get on your flight, observing all of the other measures that I've just discussed, get to your destination, do your business, do your tourism, your leisure, whatever it is, and not have to self-quarantine on the way back, providing you test negative. We're also studying as an industry the feasibility of COVID-tested trips. This is really in the working model phase, but the idea, the concept behind it is to make sure that everyone that gets on the flight, everyone, all the tour guides, everyone associated, plus staff at any hotels or resorts are all testing negative. So it's a tourism bubble, I guess you could say. And all these measures will just provide data for governments to reduce travel restrictions. Of course, we all want to travel. I think I can broadly say that. We all want to travel, but we all also recognize that we can only or should only be doing that when the conditions merit. So speaking about our plans for recovery, we're pretty much at zero with the exception of our corporate travel. We have some rather large corporate clients. The jets and the bombers aren't really going very far these days. The recovery is, what we're trying to do is look past the 2019 figures. What I mean by that is within the industry, as we speak with each other, we talk about, geez, we really want to get back to those 2019 figures. We want to get back to those volumes. We're looking past that. We're thinking there are other ways that we can increase travel for our Indigenous owned business. And that is increasing Indigenous tourism experiences and creating multi-day experiences that can be packaged for the global audience. But in the meantime, we could be increasing domestic tourism, having people within Canada travel to Indigenous tourism experiences. We work closely with ITAC to promote Indigenous tourism. We handle their corporate travel, for example, and a lot of the travel to Indigenous destinations. And also, this is really important to us, and we've been getting a lot of traction, even though people aren't traveling. So there are a number of corporations and pretty much every government in Canada that has publicly stated that they support the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. We see holding these corporations and governments to account for these publicly stated messages. And the way that we do that is we approach them and say, hey, large Canadian bank, for example, you have a $10 million corporate travel spend. If you give that to Indigeno Travel, you have just created 7 jobs. We will give you our logo, you do with it what you will, and by all means, scream it from the mountaintops. You've done a very good thing, especially vis-a-vis call to action 92 or economic reconciliation. And in turn, we will take your logo and we will spread it far and wide that you have done something good and you should be recognized for it. So that's really helping with our plans for recovery. Even though people aren't traveling, we are signing up a lot of accounts. So we're very thankful for that. And in the same way, we're approaching First Nations organizations and telling them about the services that we have that I can't really quite get into too much here today. But corporate discounts and self-booking apps are what we see a lot of First Nations organizations are happy to see as options. Because heretofore, people were going onto the web, they'd have someone in their office just going onto the web, and they're not getting corporate discounts. The self-booking apps and those different kinds of options aren't available. And we're using cutting edge technologies to increase travel. And of course, all the time, hiring and training Indigenous people in the travel industry. Indigenous tourism experiences exist, but many areas lack a cohesive way of tying them together. I guess you could say they're islands unto themselves. They have great high quality experiences that people really love, but no one's tying them together. And what we do at Indigeno is we're able to create custom itineraries. The study has shown that the world is hungry for authentic Indigenous tourism experiences. ITAC, Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, is doing an extraordinary job at bringing all this data to the fore so that we as an ally, we're both allies of each other, working towards increasing Indigenous tourism experiences. They're a very valuable organization. So Indigeno Travel has over 30 years of experience building, through our partnership with Great Canadian, building complex itineraries the world over and in Canada's northern Indigenous communities. We're poised to create jobs in not only the travel industry, hiring and training in our office. We also have an office in Edmonton, but also through, indirectly through Indigenous tourism experiences in the community. Our latest graduate, if you will, or our latest employee, she spent a month with us in our Winnipeg office. Miranda Kennedy, fluent Cree speaker from Little Pine. She finished her practicum with us, spent a month, and it was great. And once COVID is over, we expect to be doing this quite a bit more. So just about our services, and I will go through this quickly for the sake of time. I think I pointed out at the beginning, our purpose is to create jobs, create that pool of talented people, to strengthen households by sending salaries into Indigenous homes, and sharing in order to grow. And bringing people together. Reconciliation and action is the way that we like to coin. We coin that phrase when we talk about the corporate travel that we're doing with Indigenous or non-Indigenous corporations and government. Committing all of our energies to ending negative stereotypes and attracting employees, etc. So, but looking beyond today, an observation, I guess you could say, is that Indigenous people and organizations, they purchase their travel services independently of each other. With everyone going it alone, there's no collective purchasing power. There's no aggregating of the overall spend for all the First Nations in Canada. Everybody's just going alone. And because of that, there's no chance to reap the windfalls of economies of scale, which means deeper discounts. The more people we get together, the more we represent as a power in the travel world, the deeper discounts that we get. So what we're doing is we're harnessing that revenue and generating jobs in both travel industry and through Indigenous tourism experiences in the communities. So the overall outlook, I guess you could say, is that rather than continuing as just passive consumers where all you're really doing is just buying the service and you get nothing else back, rather than doing it that way, we're taking control of this business opportunity and reaping the benefits. And today, the many millions of dollars spent for travel services, that's all you're getting is just travel services, no other benefits, no employment benefits, no economies of scale driving down prices or getting better deals. So we are poised to change that. Now, just touching on, again, as I have a couple times here, about the corporate approach that we're taking. and that's going to really help us recover from the effects of COVID, is obviously the supply of travel and tourism services to Indigenous people, being an Indigenous owned organization, is the obvious target market. But what we really think holds a lot of promise is convincing corporations and governments and universities, colleges, all kinds of other entities to place their travel business with Indigeno as their contribution to the TRC. So if we did get a bank or a resource company or a university, what we do is we approach them and say, listen, this is not meant to be an exclusive for you. We want you to challenge other people in your industry and in your sectors of the economy to likewise, place their travel business with Indigeno and thereby create jobs. So this is our call to action, the call to action 92. Economic reconciliation is what it's broadly referred to as. And then just ending on what our travel services are. Everything we do is wrapped in personal service. So unlike the Expedias of the world and some of these other large online travel agencies, you have an issue, you just end up being in a queue. You don't have anyone to contact. With Indigeno, you have a dedicated agent for both corporate travel and for leisure and Indigenous tourism experiences. We have emergency services available 24/7. Actually, we had a brief conversation before we started the webinar about how valuable that can be. If you've gone to traveled to some other country and all of a sudden you have a family emergency or you have an illness or the weather, there's any number of different reasons why you have to get hold of people to either delay your departure or speed it up. Also becoming very important to corporations and to First Nations are carbon offsets, and we have those available. The corporate flight discounts that a lot of people are unaware that you can get. We have robust financial reporting for accounting departments for corporate. And if you have existing travel policies, we can adopt them into our self-booking app. We have over 650 corporate accounts in Canada and the US presently. We have staff in place to handle a large influx of Indigeno travel business. We're getting poised for when the pent-up demand for travel is finally able to be released once COVID starts receding. We're preparing ourselves for that by planning. We have over 40 years of experience in Canada's Indigenous communities through Great Canadian Travel, but mostly in the north. We have travel agent training systems already in place. You saw Miranda there. She came for part of our training. And of course, with 50 employees, we do have a bit of turnover. So we train people all the time. We have formed a bond with ITAC. People have heard of them before, an outstanding organization. If I haven't said that enough, the work that they do and the importance of what they're doing right now for Indigenous tourism, it's hard to understate how important that is. With Indigeno as the only national Indigenous-owned full-service travel agency in Canada, working with ITAC is a pleasure and an honor. There's me and Keith. That was last year at the November Kelowna International Indigenous Tourism Conference. And that concludes the formal part of my presentation. And I see that there are some questions here, or answers rather. So if you needed to travel within Canada, but not past the interprovincial borders, would you get on a flight? We have 25% people saying unsure. I don't know, Douglas, is this something that you take over? Webinars are a little bit different sometimes.
These are just the poll results. So
okay.
Yeah, so we have 75% said no and 25% are unsure on that question. Second one, if the proposed COVID test tested trips. Would you take your family on holiday outside Canada? People, 50% no, 50% unsure. So
Totally understandable.
yeah,
Especially given this current wave that we're all experiencing across Canada. It is difficult sometimes to remain optimistic, but we know that even something as severe as the 1918 pandemic, they do recede. These are different days. It's not an exact comparison, but it is difficult, as I say, to remain optimistic. But we are planning for the future, and the Indigenous tourism part is very exciting for us. Because Indigeno Travel is also a wholesaler. We're one of the few travel organizations in the country that actually wholesales. And what I mean by that is we have a retail, you can contact us for corporate or leisure Indigenous tourism experiences. But we also have a team of people who create itineraries. So what that means is we can take a number of different Indigenous tourism experiences in even intra-provincial, between Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and create a multi-day itinerary tying all these different organizations together. And we see a lot of hope for the future post-COVID, that creating these new itineraries, these new Indigenous tourism itineraries is really something that's going to help the industry and help people on the ground. We have over 700 different travel agencies that we currently wholesale to. And when you match up that the world is hungry through ITAC's studies and Destination Canada as well, when you add up the hunger in the world for Indigenous tourism and our distribution into the 700, Asia, Europe, Africa, all through, of course, Europe and the UK, Germany and France are also, really anxious to get some Indigenous tourism experiences in Canada, because Canada is considered safe. You're considered a safe place to go. When you're comparing it to the US, of course, that's pretty easy to see.
we have two questions here. One's from Dean. Are you providing travel insurance in the event a COVID situation arises while traveling?
Yes, we are. There are new products that the insurance industry has come out with. They're not as, they're a little more restrictive than what you would have been used to just regularly purchasing travel insurance, say in 2019. But they're changing all the time. And I'd be happy if you want to info@indigenotravel.com. I can certainly send you some of the companies that are producing these products right now.
Okay. Another question from Jamie Seuss. Can you provide an example of what you would consider to be an Indigenous travel experience?
Well, I'll give you one that I went on that November trip when you saw me shaking hands with Keith Henry there. I went to Moccasin Trails, I believe it was called. Geez, I'm going to get myself in trouble. But so around the Okanagan, we got into a van, and a number of us, and we visited communities. We saw people in the communities who were being paid for that, and they were telling us stories of their community. Our guide actually took us to some Indigenous places that are revered by the local people and told us the stories. We went actually right into West Bank First Nation. We toured some of their cultural spots. We also learned more about the community itself and went into some of their buildings. We went to an Indigenous-owned hotel that had an experience there where we sat in a home, a traditional home, sort of underground. It was really quite fascinating. And two people told us the story of the old ways and sang and did ceremony, and it was quite life-changing. It's kind of hard to explain, But it was fantastic. It was really good.
Where
So,
can we view these itineraries?
sorry?
Where can we view these itineraries?
Well, you can go onto the ITAC website. Our website is just being built right now, and we're working on our itineraries as part of our recovery plan.
Okay.
So we're taking the, you could take a look at the different experiences you'll find. There are some itineraries, I believe, on the ITAC site, but all the different experiences that you'll find there, we're working on bringing those together into experiences, multi-Indigenous tourism experiences.
Great. So I guess at this time, I'd like to thank our presenter, Chris Maxfield, and all our participants for registering for today's live webinar. I'd like to mention that AFOA Canada is offering several virtual training programs, including online courses, tax clinic training, capacity development workshops, and our certified courses, including our new Indigenous Human Resources Professional certification. This week, I'd like to highlight our national virtual capacity development workshops, particularly the new one-day workshop on not-for-profit board governance, achieving your mission through good governance practices, that is scheduled for November 17th and 18th. And this session will be held over 2 half days. This workshop is designed to help you gain understanding of organizational governance as it applies to not-for-profits, understand the roles, responsibilities, and duties for not-for-profit directors, and to help determine how not-for-profit boards contribute to the mission of their organizations. Don't miss out and register today for this upcoming workshop at www.afoa.ca. And again, please visit our website for more information to view the recordings and slides that will be added to the webinar page. Remember, if you register and attend 3 of our webinars in this series, you're entered to win a prize and will be contacted by email. Good luck, everyone, and please fill out the survey which will appear after the webinar. And thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.